Joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network is Tony Sayegh. He's the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the U.S. Treasury Department. Tony, good to have you with us.
I want to thank you on behalf of all of us in Washington for getting rid of this very dense humidity and giving us two beautiful days since you've been broadcasting from the nation's capital.
I know. See, I come up here and I bring a nice beach weather with me. And I don't know how you guys – I mean, I love coming here on Monday and going back on Fridays, especially in the summer, because, Tony, I'm a beach guy. I love the ocean, and I am 22 minutes – I mean, I got this down to a science. I am 22 minutes from walking out of my door to foot in water, 22 minutes exactly, including parking and everything else. That's very tough to give up when you live at the beach. And D.C., you want to get to the beach, you have to leave Monday to get there Wednesday or something like that, especially with the traffic. Tony, look, we can put the debate on Obamacare off for a second. A lot of us are wondering, where is the president's tax reform package? How do we get the 3% GDP growth? That's the only way we're going to get out of this morass we're in, and we got to get the economy going. The only way we're going to get this debt down as if we generate the economic activity. Look, I was there, Tony, in the White House press briefing when your boss, Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, and Gary Cohn, they gave us a one-pager, and which I thought was brilliantly done. And they said, here is our vision for tax reform this year. Here's the parameters that the president wants. And it was a one-pager. I read that thing, and I'm like, wow, if we could ever get this done, this economy is going to take off like a bat out of hell. Where are we now? What's happening?
Yeah, well, look, tremendous progress has been made. We've been working on tax reform since day one of the Trump administration, and people should remember that Secretary Mnuchin was a key economic advisor to the president while he was campaigning largely on his economic plan and agenda. And that is largely the blueprint from which we're basing what we believe will be real pro-growth, job-creating tax reform. And you've identified the goal. The goal is to get this economy growing in a sustained way around 3%. The difference between 2 and 3% growth, John, is $2 trillion over 10 years to the federal treasury. That is a very significant positive economic impact for the country. And the reality is we've had very stagnant, anemic growth since the financial crisis, or hovering in the low 1%. And that's not going to help grow the middle-income families, grow jobs that are good paying, grow wages, and largely you've seen the negative ramifications of an economy that doesn't grow over the past 8 years. So we're focused largely on job creation and economic growth. And since that announcement, which, as you point out, might have been on a page, double-sided by the way, had a lot of bold proposals on there, reducing significantly the business tax rate to 15% so we can make American companies competitive again and get them to start creating jobs, significantly reducing middle-income taxes, focusing on simplifying the tax code so you could fill out, as an average taxpayer, your tax return on a maybe oversized postcard. So there's a lot of things we're doing, getting rid of special interest loopholes and deductions pretty much across the board. We're talking about protecting, obviously, mortgage interest and charitable deductions and protect retirement savings. But beyond that, we've had for 30 years special interests and lobbyists lard up the tax code to protect just very parochial interests. So we're going to make it fair again. We're going to make it simple again. And we're going to make the tax code great again.
I want to go over some of the main pieces of it, if I can, Tony, get a little bit in the weeds here. And I want to get to one of the biggest things, which is repatriation, so that everybody understands this. We have about $3 trillion of U.S. corporate money parked overseas in various banks. Money was made there. They don't have to bring it back. They don't want to pay a 35% tax on it, so they keep it there, $3 trillion. One of your plans is you have a period of time where companies can bring this money back into the United States at $3 trillion, Tony Sayegh, a lot of money. Bring it back into the U.S., right, in a period of time where you're going to pay much lower taxes than 35%, kind of a period, tax amnesty. You bring that $3 million back in the United States. If you did nothing but that tomorrow, you're going to get amazing growth. What's the plan on it?
You sound like our good friend Larry Kudlow, although he's absolutely right. There probably are many very strong aspects of our tax reform plan. The repatriation piece is essential because, to your point, the magnitude of dollars that are deferred offshore are in the trillions, and we need that money reinvested back into the American economy to create jobs. And the real problem is, John, that right now we have a tax system that's basically on the worldwide system. So that encourages companies to keep their profits offshore, because if they repatriate them, once they repatriate them, they're getting taxed at that very large 35% rate. What we're calling for is going to a territorial system so that no matter where they have their money, it is being taxed. So it incentivizes them to have to bring it back to the country. And by reducing our rate to around 15%, which is what we're proposing, we think that's the most pro-growth rate, you are incentivizing companies to reinvest into the American economy and create jobs, which is really the entire goal. The other thing,
Tony, why
more
not
broadly, it's called, we've referred to it and others have as well, as a corporate tax rate, and it is functionally the highest in the world right now. Canada has a lower rate than we do. Most countries do, certainly in the industrialized world. And the reality is this is a business tax rate. So while, yes, corporations will be able to have that rate and hopefully will then repatriate that money and help grow jobs, we're also going to make sure small businesses get that rate, that, pass-throughs, that these kind of small owner-operated businesses in the United States that are also a major essential engine of job creation get the benefit of that lower tax rate. So they could take their money and instead of paying it to the government, reinvest it into their companies and grow jobs. That's the way our system works best.
Okay, so stay on repatriation for a second because everybody can understand this. Money is over there. You talked about coming back at 15%. Why not just have, hey, we're going to have a 12-month amnesty. You bring the money back, you pay nothing. You're not losing anything. They're not paying a dime on it now. So what if you just said, you have this period of time, you bring the money back, on that money you don't pay a dime, let's get it back in the economy. Why not do that? Why not get the money in? Why not do that separately?
Let me just comment for clarification, John, that the money that's already offshore will come back under our plan at a certain rate that we're still discussing and negotiating. It will be a rate that we believe would be pro-growth, but also at the same time incentivizing the companies to return their money onshore. When I refer to the business tax rate, it's going forward for these companies and also changing us from a worldwide to a territorial system. That's a very important aspect of this, to avoid the whole idea of deferring profits by keeping them overseas. So there's the repatriation piece, which under kind of the discussions we're having with Congress and Capitol Hill. And by the way, it's important to note that Secretary Mnuchin and Gary Cohn, representing the administration, work on a regular basis and in a very unified and cooperative way with the principals on Capitol Hill and congressional leadership to make sure that when this legislation comes, it's been informed by all the interested parties, that we have the public engagement that we've been receiving and doing here at the White House and Treasury Department and the Hill, who've been talking to their members, who go to talk to their constituents, making sure that we are getting all those ideas circulated, discussed, and ultimately creating the most powerful and supportable tax reform legislation out of Congress. But the bottom line is, when it comes to repatriation, you're talking about two things. You're talking about the short term, the money out there now, the trillions and trillions that we need to bring back, and then you're talking about the long term, creating a tax system that is sustainable and helps make our companies more competitive and helps encourage them to invest in American jobs.
So, Tony, let's break this down. Our corporate tax rate right now, 35%. Like you said, highest in the free world, highest anywhere, higher than Canada, for heaven's sakes. So obviously you cut that, you're going to get money going back into the economy. Where are you on the capital gains tax? You cut capital gains, you spur investment. Explain what that percentage is now and what the Trump administration's vision is of doing with that.
Well, currently there is a 3.8% surcharge on essentially capital gains in Obamacare. And part of the plan that we hope will get through Congress in the repeal of Obamacare is repealing this 3.8%, what they call a surcharge, but essentially it's a capital gains tax increase. If for whatever reason that doesn't happen, I strongly believe we will consider it as part of larger tax reform to eliminate that. Because the bottom line is, If you want less of something, tax it. But we want more of capital investment. We want more of risk-taking. We want more capital formation. So if we want that, because that's what helps create economic growth and jobs, we're going to have to address the capital gains tax piece of this thing. So whether it's done through Obamacare or tax reform, we certainly are focused on it.
Well, just removing the 3.8% surcharge on cap gains, that'll do a little bit, but capital gains tax was too high before that. So let's say you get that removed, then what? What's the next step here?
Well, look, we're focused on a massive tax reform overhaul that's pro-growth and focuses on job creation. And we're going to, as you will watch and see, release details of that in September as it begins to get through the legislative process. And you'll see from capital gains and beyond, I think the idea that we are focused on a pro-growth tax reform plan that will, again, get us to the 3% economic growth rate so we can actually get this economy working and moving again and working for everybody.
Look, so everybody understands we're under 1%. We've been hovering around 1 or under 1% GDP, gross domestic product growth under Obama for a long time. It's anemic. And so you can't grow jobs. You can't grow the economy. You can't get the debt down when you're growing the economy at under 1%. You just can't do it. Our entitlement base is too high. We need to generate income. Income comes from people working and getting jobs. Okay, Tony, let's get to brass tacks here. So I'm a listener right now, and the bulk of my listeners, as everybody knows, I have a working class blue collar listenership in my area. So I'm in Moyock, North Carolina right now, figuratively speaking, one of my listeners. And both myself and my spouse work. Right now, I'm driving up 168, going to the defense base or somewhere, Dam Neck or something. I'm driving to my job. I have 4 kids and a combined household income of $85,000. When I get to the weekend, I got 4 kids. They want to go to basketball camp. I can't send them all, right? I got to figure out how to take them to see the new Spider-Man movie that came out or whatever. I'm trying to figure that $100 out. What is this tax plan going to do for them?
So look, we've obviously been focusing on providing significant middle income tax relief, certainly as the emphasis of the individual side of our tax reform proposal. We don't get into the specific income brackets quite yet, but I will tell you from the top lines alone, most families who are middle income will find that there will be some significant tax benefits as a result of our plan. We're doubling the standard deduction, which benefits, I think the estimate is 95% of taxpayers. We're collapsing from 7 brackets to 3, which by itself will push a lot of taxpayers into a lower income bracket. We're focused on the simplification side. So basically, we're going to get rid of the tax loopholes and deductions that only benefit special interests, and it will make it easier for any family who does their taxes to do it on a simple postcard. And the reality is when you have 90% of Americans who require some sort of assistance doing their federal income taxes, I mean, that's really not a fair part of our system. It should not be that arduous. So on that basis alone, on the individual side, you'll see most middle-income families, I think, appreciate some sort of tax relief, a significant tax relief. On the business side, look, let's face it, who are the job creators? It's small and medium-sized businesses. We're focused on giving them a significant reduction in their business tax so they could take that money, reinvest it into their companies, reinvest it in their employees' wages, create good-paying jobs, which we've not had in the last 8 years. We've actually seen wage deflation, wages going down or remaining stagnant while costs go up, and that impacts the middle-income families disproportionately. And the bottom line is you're going to see a idea that we're going to give the power back to people to try to achieve their own economic destinies again when you have a growing economy where everybody benefits. Look, here at Treasury and the Trump administration, we want everyone to win. It's good that Wall Street has strong performance regardless of the anemic economy over the last 8 years, but we want Main Street to benefit from the same thing. That's not going to happen at 1% growth. So when we drive toward the goal of 3% growth, that is the rising tide that lifts all boats. That's something that John Kennedy believed. That's something Ronald Reagan believed. That's something that's been a bipartisan best practice that sadly has been lost in the very hyper-partisan landscape of the last 8 years.
Well, look, that's the old Arthur Laffer curve argument that we all espoused during the Reagan years, which I'm a believer in, and he certainly proved it right. He cut taxes and revenue went up. President Kennedy did the same thing. Tax rates went down, revenue to the Treasury went up. The Democrats dispute that because the debt went up. What they failed to realize is Reagan increased defense spending significantly over the revenue increase in order to, in his mind, bankrupt the Soviets, and he did the right thing. But everything that you've said, Tony, let me just tell you what the issue is, and I'm going to sum this up. Okay, you're giving the Wall Street Journal, trickle down, Milton Friedman, if you cut repatriation, you cut corporate taxes, then somebody on Wall Street is going to take that money and invest it in some plan in Iowa, and somebody's going to get a job. Okay, that sounds great if we're at a Wall Street Journal editorial board meeting.
That's not what I said.
What I'm asking is
applies to small businesses as well. And that's where the massive amount of job creation is required.
Tony, but if I have a job, and I've got a family of 4, and I'm making $80,000, right? And my health care premiums have gone up. I got 2 people working. And this weekend, and this is my audience, this weekend I am trying to figure out how to take my kids to the new Planet of the Apes movie. It's $150 for 4 kids with everything included. I don't have that. Tell me how this tax plan is going to help that family.
I think I just walked you through it pretty detailed.
Am I going to pay less money?
I mean, doubling the standard deduction, I think, cannot be underestimated as a powerful tool to, again, help mostly middle-income taxpayers keep more of their money. I mean, you're diagnosing something that's saying, how do we get some, extra money in someone's pocket this weekend? I mean, tax reform is about the totality of the year, the totality of your career of working and being able to achieve your economic goals. It's not a quick fix of how do you get a couple extra bucks in someone's pocket to go to a movie. It's not that simple. The idea is we are trying to make it where middle-income Americans can have access to upward mobility again, the American dream again. And that does come from, on the individual side, giving them very hard facts with relief, doubling the standard deduction, collapsing the brackets, simplifying their taxes. That's important. And on the business side, not the Wall Street corporate side, on the business side, give small businesses, the Main Street companies and mom and pop shops that are an essential part of this economy, the backbone of our job creation, dynamism here in the free market that we espouse, give them the lower tax rate so they're able to grow, so they're able to create more jobs and pay their employees better salaries. This is a whole aspect of tax reform. That's not just Laffer curve. That's not just Wall Street Journal editorial board. This is actually a very focused tax relief on growing the economy so everybody benefits. Wall Street has done very well despite very meager and anemic economic growth in the last 8 years. What we need to do is make sure we grow this economy in a way, again, you go from 2 to 3% growth, that's $2 trillion over 10 years. That's then the dynamic that helps it where everybody has a chance, everyone has a chance to achieve their part of the American dream. That's what we're focused on.